This hunk of sexy metal right here is the Toyota GR86. In this video, we'll do a full walk around and we'll talk about the differences between this and the Subaru BRZ. So is it worth the money? Let's find out. The GR86 is the spiritual successor to the AE86. If you are familiar with Initial D, the car needs no introduction. It was small, it was light, front engine, and most importantly, rear-wheel drive. So it was a hit among drifters. It wasn't very powerful, but the focus was more on fun and handling rather than power. The original GT86, the predecessor of the GR86, followed the same formula. It only had 200 horsepower, but it was small, it was light, and it was a lot of fun. The GT86 was a success, and this success probably paved the way for the re-emergence of Japanese sports cars like the GR Supra, the GR Yaris. We're about to get a new Z, and Mitsubishi is about to launch a new Eclipse. Just kidding. The GT86 was a joint project between Toyota and Subaru, and the same is the case with the GR86. It shares the same platform and plenty of parts with the Subaru BRZ. Most of the visual differences between the GR86 and the Subaru BRZ are here at the front. I think the GR86 looks a bit more aggressive. This has a more squared off grille, which gives it a more aggressive look. The BRZ has a happier looking face. Like the BRZ, this gets projector LEDs, and you also get headlight washers. These air vents right here are real. They feed air into the wheel wells. And you also have air vents here at the back, which allows the air to exit. You have this very aggressive chin over here. The GR86 has a ground clearance of 5.1 inches. Here at the front, you have about this much space, which is actually not bad for a sports car. If you ask me, I'd lower it a bit more. The car gets 18-inch wheels wrapped in Michelin Sport tires. This is a square setup, meaning that the front and the rear are the same size. So these are 215 40/18s, which are a bit narrow for a sports car, but then again, you don't really have a lot of power here. The suspensions of the BRZ and the GR86 are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. They both have McPherson's here at the front, but the spring rate here at the front is stiffer on the GR86. As for the brakes, they both get 11.6-inch disc brakes here at the front with dual piston calipers. And at the back, both the BRZ and the GR86 get single piston calipers. Both the BRZ and the GR86 get independent suspensions at the back. They're sort of like double wishbones. You have a wishbone at the top, and you have a wishbone at the bottom and a trailing arm. Now, if the front spring rate of the GR86 is softer than the BRZ, the rear spring rate is stiffer than the BRZ. Overall, the suspension of the GR86 is tuned to feel a bit more playful. It should feel a bit more tail-happy than the BRZ, at least theoretically. Hopefully, I'll get to drive the BRZ next month, and by then I can give you a first-hand account of what it's like to drive. So both the Subaru BRZ and the Toyota GR86 get the same 4-cylinder boxer engine. Like the previous generation, this is still naturally aspirated, which means that there is no turbo, but it's a bit bigger this time. It's now 2.4 liters. The previous generation only had a 2-liter engine. That extra displacement adds about 23 horsepower to the total output, so it now produces 223 horsepower. You have 2 transmission options for the new GR86, and thankfully you still have a 6-speed manual option. Okay, so here's a closer look at the engine bay. It's a boxer engine, so the cylinders are horizontally opposed to each other. Your intake is over here, and as you can see, it says Toyota Subaru because this is a joint partnership between the two brands. You have some bracing over here to improve the rigidity of the chassis. From this angle, you can very clearly see that this is a very small car. As you can see, it only goes up to here. Yeah, from this angle, it looks almost the same as the BRZ. You get this very aggressive looking side skirt. You get a sharply sloping roofline, and you get these muscular haunches over here. Now, you probably know this already, but this is a two-door car, and the windows don't have frames. From this angle, the GR86 looks almost the same as the BRZ. Also, from this angle, you can really appreciate how wide these fenders are. You get LED taillights, you get this ductile spoiler, you get rear parking sensors, you get a reverse camera, and you get dual exhaust tips. And here's a sound clip if you want to know what they sound like. Now, trunk space is not exactly cavernous. So as you can see, I have barely enough space for my camera bag. The spare tire takes up a lot of space here. Now, thankfully, the rear seats can fold down if you need more space. Now, from the inside, the GRS and the BRZ look almost the same. Of course, you get GR badging over here on the steering wheel, on the start-stop button. Now, this should also look very familiar to owners of the previous GT86. You have a very similar design theme. You have this dual layer dashboard. The top of the dashboard is covered in some sort of rubbery material. This over here is Alcantara. This is Alcantara as well. The armrests are covered in leather. You got a leather wrapped steering wheel, which is perfectly circular. You don't get a flat bottom. Over here you get buttons for your cruise control, which is adaptive, by the way. Oh no, it's adaptive. And you also have buttons here for your infotainment screen. The infotainment screen is an 8-inch unit. You have Apple CarPlay, you have Android Auto. You also have a reverse camera with active guidelines. By the way, the steering of the GR86 is pretty quick. So you can see it's only 1.5 turns from the center to lock, and 2.5 turns from lock to lock. So this may look like a manual transmission, but it's actually an automatic. Now, to shift, you can shift either using the shifter, or you can use the paddle shifters. So over here you have your track mode button. So this turns off traction control. It also changes the instrument cluster. And speaking of the instrument cluster, it's fully digital, and the shape of it mimics the shape of the Boxer engine logo. And thankfully you get a temperature gauge. So this gets dual zone climate control, and thankfully you get physical knobs. By the way, this also gets seat heating and seat cooling. Now, in terms of storage, you have a single cup holder over here. Underneath the center armrest, you have two more cup holders. You have two USB ports over here and one aux jack. The armrest itself is leather wrapped and padded. The seats are covered in leather and Alcantara. They're semi-bucket seats with pretty aggressive bolstering. Adjustment is manual for both seats. The steering wheel adjustment is also manual, and it tilts and it also telescopes. And thankfully you get a manual handbrake. Now technically this is a 2+2, so the rear seats are just there for emergency situations. Let's see if it'll fit. I'm 5'8", by the way. Now, as you can see, I don't have a lot of headroom over here. I can't sit straight, and even if I recline like this, my head is still hitting the roof. Actually, it's hitting the rear window. So my feet basically have nowhere to go. They're right underneath the seat, and there's not a lot of space down there. If you're wearing big shoes, you're not gonna fit down there. I cannot sit straight. So this is really for kids and very small adults, or people you don't like very much. Now this is a driver's car, so driver age should not be a top priority, but it's still nice to have them just in case you want to take a break from hooning. The GR86 has adaptive cruise control. I've read that there's a minimum speed for it though, so it's not very useful in city traffic. If you do get into a collision, you'd appreciate the car's 7 airbags. The GR86 automatic sells for 2.58 million pesos. The manual variant sells for 2.38 million pesos. There are only 2 variants of the GR86 in the Philippines. The BRZ has 3. The BRZ's pricing starts at 2.15 million pesos for the base model automatic and goes all the way up to 2.49 million pesos for the automatic variant with eyesight. So overall, the Toyota GR86 is a bit more expensive. It's tuned to oversteer more, but aside from those things, they're very similar cars. And it really boils down to which brand you prefer. Whichever car you choose though, you'll get one of the most desirable and fun cars for the money.
Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you on my next video.